Talk. I am your host, MISHUMA SABA, M.SABA, and this is our Cultural Variety Podcast. Stay tuned. Peace, 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 and welcome to Coffee Talk Podcast. This is the Cultural Variety Podcast show, and I am your host, MISHUMA SABA, M.SABA, and this is the Cultural Variety Podcast. How y'all doing this evening? How are y'all doing this evening? Welcome to the show. This is Season 2, Episode 2, and if this is your first time appearing on the show, we are a cultural variety podcast show that likes to appear 3 days a week. We like to appear on an alternate day of Sunday and Monday, where we would give you cultural studies. On Wednesdays, we go into our sports edition, and then alternate Friday and Saturday, we'll definitely give you grown folks humor and special guests as well. This is Coffee Talk Podcast. What we do is we specialize in bringing you the flavor. We want to uplift our people, empower our people, and strengthen our people. Give me 1 second. All right. So yeah, we are here. Missed y'all. You know, we haven't done cultural studies in a while. We took a little break for about 3 weeks, and now we're back. And we just ready to go ahead and keep it pushing for year 2. And you know, I just want to say thank y'all, man. Thank y'all for sticking around and taking this journey with us. You know what I'm saying? So, but other than that, how are y'all doing today? Go ahead and hit the like button. Let me know. Leave a comment. Let me know how's your day going. Have you overcome anything? Have you learned anything? You know, have you lost anything and refound it? You know, let me know. Leave a comment. All right, so listen, if this is your first time tuning into the show, we never start the show without giving it its flavor, okay? So we're going to definitely give it its flavor so that we can go ahead and start the show. But before we start the show, I just want to go ahead and let you know, come on in, pour yourself some coffee, a smoothie, some water, some wine, whatever you do. But come on in, kick your feet up, and enjoy yourself. Welcome to our humble home here, Coffee Talk Podcast. All right, so listen, today's flavor is Costa Rica coffee with its brown sugary fragrance. It has a very nice, subtle chocolate note, and it's medium roast. Today is our flavor is Costa Rica coffee. And also, today's wise words. Yeah, thank you. Today's wise words comes from a gentleman that was born February 6, 1945. He hails out of 9 Mile, Jamaica. He is a legend. He is someone that has impacted the whole wide world. He's definitely a legend. Some say even a god with reggae music. His name is Bob Marley. So today's wise words from Bob Marley is this: the greatness of a man is not in how much wealth he acquires, but in his integrity and his ability to affect those around him positively. All right. And hey, you know what? I just noticed my computer mic is on. So go ahead and leave a comment. Let me know if you can hear me clear. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and put my other microphone on. All right. Let me know if you can hear me. Go ahead and leave a comment. All right. So tonight on Cultural Studies Night, we're going to go ahead and we're going to jump into the book, The Destruction of Black Civilization by Chancellor Williams, one of our greatest scholars. And what we're going to talk about tonight is the Scholars' War on Blacks. That's right, the Scholars' War on Blacks. This is a preview going into the first chapter of this book by Chancellor Williams. I would recommend that if you don't have this book, y'all see that? Make sure you get that book and add that to your personal library. There you go. All right. Yeah, because that's what we do here on Coffee Talk, Cultural Studies Night. You know, our culture is a very big culture, very broad. So we can talk about a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of this. So what we do here at Coffee Talk Podcast is we specialize in, some days we go heavy with the culture, with our studies. Some days we go light, you know, because we can't forget about the babies, you know, but that's what we do. We try to inspire, empower, and uplift. So that's what we do on Cultural Studies Night. So let's go ahead and dive in to the Scholars' War on Blacks. Again, this is by Chancellor Williams. And the book is titled The Destruction of Black Civilization. I really want y'all to pay attention to some things that he may answer in this that you've been wondering about. So let's go ahead. The Scholars' War on Blacks. This work begins where the history of the Blacks began, in Egypt, northern Ethiopia, and the Sudan, southern Ethiopia. Thus, at the very onset, I clash head on with the Caucasian version of African history. My focus then is on the great issues in the history of Blacks that emerged from the confrontation with white scholarship. For while I have covered much of the same ground explored by scholars before me, I have generally reached different conclusions than theirs, and from the same body of facts. Let us pause for a moment at this point. I have made a blanket of indictment of white Western scholarship on Africa. If it cannot be sustained, it should never have been made. They are brought under the fire at various points throughout this work. The kind of work, as I also has stated, should be obviously needless in the closing years of the 20th century. The case against Western Africanists is rather fully set forth in the work itself, but may be outlined here as follows. Number one, first of all, they are not ignorant of the true history of the Blacks, including their achievements as builders of one of the first great civilizations on this earth. Ancient writers say it was the very first. I'm gonna repeat that. First of all, they are not ignorant of the true history of the Blacks, including their achievements as builders of one of the first great civilizations on this earth. Ancient writers say it was the very first. And the Western scholars know all about the authentic, early, modern sources. They simply ignore and refuse to publish any facts of African history that upset or even tend to upset their racial philosophy. The rest so solidly on the premises sanctified by time that they no longer need to be openly proclaimed. Number two, they are unwittingly promoting the steady march toward a world conflict between the races. Yet they are doing what they feel they must do in faithful obedience to their Caucasian culture, the racial pattern of which emerged in the 17th century. The steady conquest of enslavement of a whole people made it imperative to create both a religious and a scientific doctrine to assuage the white conscience. Their phenomenal success in the industrial world at once supports and justifies their philosophy, their supremacy of the fittest. The danger now arises from an entirely new and unexpected development, a sleeping and submissive non-white world. While all this white power was being amassed, is no longer either sleeping or submissive. Number three, even the African revolt against colonialism and the worldwide challenge to white domination of the earth, of the entire earth, even those signals of change do not disturb these scholars of imperialism. They represent the lords of the earth, controlling all levels of education, science, and research. They control the education of blacks throughout the world. Therefore, they see no need, even in the 1980s, to take a new look at the history of blacks from its beginning and start the work of restoring the pages they had either deleted or ignored. They are doing the very opposite. Their histories and other scientific studies of the blacks are presented just as they have been for 300 years. With the rise and spread of independent African states and the Black Revolution in the United States, these scholarly representatives of white supremacy quickly reformed their techniques of mind control. They set up in Europe and America highly financed African studies associations, societies, institutions, history journals, and African periodicals of various kinds, all under complete white control and direction. Their African studies programs were pushed in the colleges and universities far ahead of the general demand by Black youth for Black studies. As the latter demands developed, Black youth discovered that white professors not only had the field occupied, but were still teaching their traditional viewpoint on the race. In the continuing crusade to control the minds of blacks through the nature of their education, America and British scholars led. They are as ruthless and aggressive in their scholarly pursuits on races as their co-partners in selling and controlling the wealth and peoples of other lands. Having established strong national, international African associations and journals that attempts to control research activities on Africa, they proceeded to flood the world with hastily thrown together African histories, pamphlets, and publications on just about every subject that could stand a black title. Number 4, from their all-powerful position of strength, they continue to arrange and rearrange the world as it pleases them, naming and classifying people, places, and things as they will. In the United States, whites known to have any amount of Negro blood, no matter how small, are classified as Negroes. In Africa, North Africa in particular, they do the very opposite. Blacks with any amount of Caucasian blood are classified as white. This scheme was rigorous, applied in the history of Egypt. For example, where even unmixed black pharaohs became white, and the original black population was never referred to as Egyptian at all. The black kings who funded and ruled from the first dynasty are disguised as such, while the site kings, which is white, of the small areas of Lower Egypt are presented as the pharaohs of all Egypt, even when African pharaohs were on the throne of Upper Egypt. Blotting the blacks out of history included replacing African names of persons, place, and things with Arabic and European names. One wave of the master's magic wand, and black Hamites and even Cushites, like their early Egyptian brothers, are no longer Africans. There's a lot of stuff popping out, man. If you're watching this right now as we're reading this great preview, there's things that I want to ask you. Like, there's some people, have you ever, I'm just going to just dive in just for a second. We'll get right back on our study. But people get bothered when you take on a spiritual name, a conscious name, a godly name. I've noticed people take offense or fear when I use my names other than what we call today my government name. You can't go doing that. Massa gonna get mad. Your name ain't MISHUMA. That's how they sound. when they criticize a name that don't have no intentions of bothering them. Let's get back in our studies and we'll talk about just a little bit more. The periodization of African history is carefully arranged in such a way that the history becomes the history of Arabs and Europeans in Africa, and not the history of Africans. In African history, a recent publication of the American Historical Association as a guide to teaching their purpose becomes clear in the arrangement itself. First period is the fall of the Roman Empire to 700 AD. The Arab invasion, the second period of the African history, is the period of Islamic civilization. 700 AD to the coming of the Europeans in 1500. The European period from 1500 to 1960 is subdivided. At 1880 to mark the period of colonialism. There is no period of Black civilization in Black Africa, such as the Caucasian viewpoint. That is almost a religion. Their very first periods eliminates 4,000 years of Black civilization. And the very greatest periods of African achievements, their second period is devoted to the Arabs and Berbers of Africa. And in their third period, the focus is on European civilization. And it is all done under the heading of African history. And I started to notice that, as I'm just going to pause as we get ready to continue, that a lot of our people tend to take on or try to emulate Arab ways and customs. And it's truly, truly interesting to me because a lot of them tend to get lost in Islam. And you see, they tend to want to live a certain custom, a religious part, and they tend to forget about the fact that Islam is not a religion, it's a way of life. Yet many of our people take on an Arab custom to that. And what it's saying here is it's saying that this is not by mistake. When you have European scholars that control the narrative of your history. So even when you're trying to get the knowledge, people, you got to make sure you're going to people that have information that can give you the right information, or at least get you on the path to go towards the information that you seek. You don't want to just take anything at first value. You don't want nobody coming to you telling you your history. Here's an example. People tend to say things such as, man, why ain't American school system not teaching our history? And I always pause and I say, would you really want them to? Because see, a person that don't look like you, or even a person that does look like you but works for an institution paid by someone else, meaning that you got to read their curriculum, they're not going to give you information that will empower you, but it'll keep you at a level of content. Let's continue. Where do we leave off here? Give me one moment. Very good show tonight. Very good show. Definitely leave a comment. Again, we are reading From the Destruction of Black Civilization by the great author, Chancellor Williams. And this is Coffee Talk Podcast. This is our cultural studies night. All right. If you came for anything else, this is not that night. This is the night that we get in here. So if you got a young teenager or a young kid that wants to learn a little bit of history This is a good time to learn some things. Even you, as an adult, can pick up on some things. But this is where we give it to you. We give you the flavor here at Coffee Talk Podcast. So definitely hit the like button, leave a comment, hit the share button, let people know that we are having our cultural studies tonight. And also subscribe. You can go right on YouTube and subscribe. So definitely subscribe to our show. We appear three times a week, bringing you the flavor in our culture. Now, let me just see where we left off, y'all. I think I was on 4. Just give me a moment. We were talking about the Arabs. Here it is. Okay, I found it. So what I want to do is I just want to back up to 4 just so that we can bring it in the way we're supposed to here. Okay. All right. So number 4. From their all-powerful position of strength, no, I don't think we were on 4. And I do apologize, but I'm going to find out where we were at. I know we were talking about the Arabs, so I'm going to get right back to that. Just give me a second. Give me a second. Thank y'all for definitely turning in. Okay, so yeah, so where we stated that they were blotting the blacks out of history. So yeah, we will start with 4. Let's go ahead and do that now. Number 4, their all-powerful position of strength. They continue to arrange and rearrange the world as it pleases them, naming and classifying people, places, and things as they will. In the United States, whites known to have any amount of Negro blood, no matter how small, are classified as Negroes. In Africa, North America in particular, they do the very opposite. Blacks with any amount of Caucasian blood are classified as white. This scheme was rigorous applied in the history of Egypt, for example, where even unmixed black pharaohs became white, and the original black population was never referred to as Egyptian at all. The black kings who founded and ruled from the first dynasty were disguised as such, while the side kings, which mean white, of the small areas of Lower Egypt are presented as the pharaohs of all Egypt, even when African pharaohs were on the throne of Upper Egypt. Blotting the blacks out of history included replacing African names of persons, place, and things with Arabic and European names. One wave of the master's magic wand. And black Hamites and even Cushites, like their early Egyptian brothers, are no longer African. Their periodization of African history is carefully arranged in such a way that the history becomes the history of Arabs and Europeans in Africa, and not the history of Africans. In African history, a recent publication of the American Historical Association as a guide to teaching, the purpose becomes clear in the arrangement of itself. The first period is the fall of the Roman Empire back in 1700 AD. The Arab invasion is the second period of African history in the period of the Islamic civilization. 700 AD to the coming of the Europeans in 1500. The European period from 1500 to 1960 is subdivided at 1880 to mark the period of colonialism. There is no period of black civilization in Black Africa. Such is the Caucasians' viewpoint that is almost a religion. Their very first period eliminates 4,000 years of black civilization and the very greatest periods of African achievement. Their second period is devoted to the Arabs and the Berbers in Africa. And in the third period, the focus is on European civilization. And it is all done under the heading of African history. Where is it impossible to deny Black achievements equal to and often above the whites? Such achievements are a tribute to some kind of Caucasian influence, even in imaginary. Yet the AHA publication number 56 uses the same strategy that makes Western scholarship so very triumphant. The main thrust of its racist presuppositions are, for the unwary, completely hidden by much highly welcome factual materials. But what is certain to disarm almost everyone is racism's forthright attacks on racism throughout the publication. I suppose no one is expected to notice the implied incapacity of Black historians to deal with African history objectively. They are not referred to as historians. Of course they are. Some modern African intellectuals who have tried to show great civilizations in the past grander than anything that ever existed. So you don't look at us as historians, people, because we look like you. That's what he's saying. As a direct result of this continued universal enslavement through education, Black youth are in revolt. That revolt will become increasingly dangerous as they begin to realize how completely they are blocked from self-realization in the very institutions that should further it. How difficult is it to find suitable textbooks in Black history, or even Negro teachers who do not limit themselves to the viewpoints of the white masters who trained them? Ain't that what I said? I said they can even look like you. But if they're working for that institution, then they're carrying out that institution's curriculum. So when people say, man, why are they not teaching our people, man, at the schools? You got to really ask, why would you want them to? I would rather my children come home from schools and get properly taught. I'd rather our community have community gatherings and get properly taught. And, you know, as bad as this may seem, but come out of them churches and get properly taught. Let's continue. The frustrations became more intolerable as the young find themselves between two fires: the white racists who determine the very nature of their education, and the Negro educators who also see the world through the blue eyes of the Saxons. In short, they are forced to turn to their own device because they find so many of their own race who should be working with them in the camps of the enemy. Insofar as periodization is concerned, no one should be so naive as to expect a proper division of African history while the field is almost completely preempted by the enemies of that history. A proper division would tend to encourage a more all-exclusive research and a less biased interpretation of the results. Neither will happen until a new generation of Black research scholars and historians take the field, becoming the foremost authorities in their own right. Black historians, not a single one of them will fall in Professor Philip D. Curtin's category of Black intellectuals who try to show great civilization in the past grander than anything that ever existed. The new research efforts call for Black experts to not only in the field of history, but also in the allied fields from which African history must heavily draw on archaeology, anthropology, and linguistics. The new approach. Actually, I think I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop right there. We'll talk about the new approach next week on cultural studies. It's only 3 pages left. That's getting good, y'all. So what did you start to hear as we were discussing the scholars' war on blacks? What stood out to you? We'd love to hear it here at Coffee Talk Podcast, the Cultural Variety Podcast Show. Go ahead and leave your comments. Hit the like button. Make sure you share the video and definitely subscribe. All right, man, we got to start getting our subscribers up. We get great viewership, but we got to get you to hit that like button. We got to get you to subscribe. We want to bring you more and more flavor. This is our show, y'all. This is new media. No bias here, just fact. We are sick and tired of the old media being a part of the system that leads us astray and have us watching shows that keep you on a savage mind state through a savage frequency. So this is what we do here at Coffee Talk Podcast, the Cultural Variety Podcast Show. We love to bring you the flavor here in our Cultural Studies Night. Did anything stand out to you about how they want to change names and places and things? And how when they talk about the dynasties, yes, they talk about the second dynasty, but they talk about the Arabs bringing Islam into the continent. I'm not here to debate. But in some cases, they say that Arabs is not really of that. I'm not here to debate. Let me know what your thoughts are on that, though. Leave a comment. But other than that, that ends our show for tonight. This is Coffee Talk Podcast, the Cultural Variety Podcast Show. And again, we appear 3 nights a week. Alternate nights are Sunday and Mondays. Sports night is Wednesday. And then we have an alternate night on Friday and Saturday. We thank you for appearing at our show tonight. And each and every Sunday, Monday night, we bring you the Cultural Studies Night. Thank you for tuning in. And I want to go ahead and hit you with the universal peace sign. I just want to say, man, y'all be easy, stay positive, stay safe, stay eating good food, stay healing your body and your mind, and stay loving one another. This is Coffee Talk Podcast. I am your host, MISHUMA SABA, M.SABA, and this is our Cultural Variety Podcast Show. We'll see y'all Wednesday. Thank you.